Is it going? Yep, there we go. Awesome. So to start out nice and easy, who are you and what are you running for?
Hi, I'm Charles Barker, and I'm running for Director of Events and Services this year.
Why are you running to be DoES?
There's a lot of small reasons, really. I've spent 5 years at this university now, and at the beginning of my university career, I kind of just saw the union as a place to go out at night and get drunk. But over my time, as I grew up, maybe as I matured a bit, I began just seeing the fact that the union is way more than just a place to go on a Friday night and get drunk. It's a place where students come together, they find passions, they work, they find common ground, they face challenges, and they try and really just it's an incredible place for just building up I'm losing my point already. I'm sorry. Basically, it's far more than just a place to go get drunk, and as Director of Events and Services, the remit covers all sorts of things which I am interested in. Of course, I'm interested in nights out, but equally, I'm interested in helping the student body to find their passions, find their interests, and really, at the end of the day, just improve their experience. Yeah,
Awesome. So, like you kind of mentioned, the union is a place that probably more than any other place in St. Andrews, a student will experience at least once in their career as a student.
exactly.
And I'm kind of wondering, taking that we all have experiences with the union, what do you feel it is specifically about your past experiences and your past work that make you qualified to best run it and best improve it?
Yes. Well, I have been employed in various sort of events places. I have spent over a year working at the Old Course Hotel, working in their events department. As well, I had a short stint working at the Vic as a bartender. So I know firsthand how stressful it can be to be a person that is directly trying to give and make these experiences happen. Whilst I recognize that I don't have much leadership experience, I think that I can bring a sort of great perspective to the union and to the way that things are run. I know that I have passion, and yeah.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. You said that you did some stuff for the old course. Like, what did managing those events look like?
Yeah, so it was mostly very, very big 5-star events, very, very stressful. Obviously, I wasn't managing it, but it meant that everyone had to be all hands on deck all the time. You would go in sort of early on in the day. You had to be prepared for things to change at a moment's notice. I have sort of been at the beck of call of some very, let's just say, choosy brides, for example, who obviously have a very, very specific idea of what they want their night to be. It's their special day. And I think that experience I want to bring to the union, whilst we're not doing weddings and big events like that at the union, I want to bring that kind of sense of you have to make everything special for every person, and you have to be flexible enough to make that happen at a moment's notice, and at the end of the day, I think my experience at the Old Course Hotel, sort of by working those quite high class events, puts me in good stead to deal with sort of anything that's been gets thrown my way.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds like it. I can imagine it would be a pretty demanding and exacting job.
Yeah.
So moving kind of a little bit back to St. Andrews, but also kind of staying on the theme of what you said about making everything special to each person, I think that there are some conceptions of St. Andrews that it held amongst current students as well, that they feel that it is a place that's not just elite, but can also be elitist. And for many people, this
Yes.
does sort of center around events. So I was kind of wondering,
Yeah.
is this, well, you already said yes, but is this a view that you sort of agree with? And if so, what role do you think the DoES has in combating this and making our community a place where everyone can sort of enjoy everything that they would want to enjoy?
Yep, I would wholeheartedly agree with that statement. I come from a working class background, and it was kind of shocking when I came to St Andrews. I felt a bit out of place. I still do feel a bit of a sense of imposter syndrome in a way. Um, I think a key way to sort of that the DoES would help reduce those perceptions is to ensure that societies run smoothly, because I think that the student experience in St Andrews, what's special about it is that it is run primarily by students. Um, and the DoES has an active role in that, along with the DOSDA, in helping societies do their own thing. Now, the DoES specifically just helps with the more building and making sure that spaces are appropriate and everything. So I would hope that I would work to, no matter which societies and no matter what they do, I would want to encourage them to try and extend their handout to as many students as possible. I will also say that a key part of my manifesto, I think, is keeping events cheap, events free potentially. There is I know that a big part of my manifesto is to try and reintroduce a Wednesday club night. I know that that has been sort of discussed before and tried to be implemented and everything. We've had other nights out where there have been cover charges, and the fact of the matter is that we need to keep those events as cheap as possible to make sure that everyone can access them. Of course, I would still need to work for the more and to ensure that the fashion shows which go on at the union, etc., they are still going to go ahead. And whilst they might have a cost barrier for some students, I also do recognise that those are key events which happen and are held in Highstead and are seen as sort of big parts of the year for a lot of students. So
Yeah.
I would work to keep them sort of going as well.
What is one thing that you think your predecessor in DoES has done well? And what is one thing that you think that they have either managed poorly or you would have liked them to have seen done, but they didn't do?
It's an interesting question. I think my predecessor has been really, really good at communication. I think especially during this, like it's been a year unlike any other, and so communicating with what they've been doing and sort of keeping in touch with the student body. Tom has an incredible sort of link to so many people that I don't think anyone can really match. I also do think that I was here over Christmas, and the free food provided by the union was a great sort of provision that really helped anyone that was staying here over winter. If anything, especially whilst restrictions got sort of tighter and tighter, if anything, it gave you a reason to get up and out of bed, you know, to leave the house for the day and do your daily exercise. So I do think that was a really a great move.
Mm-hmm.
As for things I would improve, whilst the communication was there, I feel as if there have been some groups that have been a bit left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, when he was campaigning for elections last year, made it very clear that he had preconceived notions about certain groups and societies, which maybe he had a personal, not, I don't want to say vendetta, but personal feelings towards. And I do know that, for example, on the rocks, he made a point of mentioning even at the debate that he was going to restructure and do everything and yada, yada, yada. And I have been in touch with people who are involved with On the Rocks this year who have said that he's been somewhat difficult to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely something that I would change. I know that I would try to be a DoES that sort of puts my personal thoughts and feelings about certain groups behind me and just aim to be good at the job for everyone.
Absolutely. I think that's a very admirable goal considering how many different sorts of groups sort of fall under the DoES remit.
Exactly.
Yeah. So moving on to sort of manifesto specific questions, something that I noticed in your manifesto that really stood out to it with regards to the in comparison to the other ones is that you kind of upfront basically said what we all think when we think about BOPs.
Yeah.
And I think sort of BOPs to DoES are akin to what accommodation or lecture recordings are to other people's manifestos.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of wondering, like, what do you think is sort of the number one thing that you will do with regards to BOPs if you were to be elected?
Everyone knows that sort of for the past few years now, every single DoES campaign I can think of have campaigned on, I'm going to change the BOP. And it hasn't happened really that much. I do know that it was sort of a consultation was started with students last March, but we know what happened last March that kind of made making that consultation and fulfilling the results of that consultation, making it a reality, obviously didn't happen. Now, unfortunately, I'm unsure of exactly what's happened with that since, but I would work to sort of continue that. I presume that there's been work going on behind the scenes, which I don't really know about, by Tom, because changing the BOP is obviously a big part of anyone's campaign. I think the key point is really that we need a rebrand and a refresh. We need to move away from the cheese, move away from... When you go to the BOP, you know exactly what to expect. You're going to get... The theme is there, and you might have a couple of songs that maybe... If it's an Ariana Grande night, you might have a couple of Ariana Grande songs, but you're going to hear Mr. Brightside. You know you're going to hear Chelsea Dagger. There's not really a provision for an actual club type night. So I would work with other DJs, especially from Dundee, to try and encourage sort of a wider range of music. Tastes, I would like to sort of make it a bit more clubby. If you go to Dundee Union, admittedly we don't have the spaces that they have because they have 5 floors, but they do sort of have more house, techno, just other genres of music which are represented. I think by representing those other tastes in music would go a long way in just changing the perceptions of the BOP. And I think that is the number one thing that you need to do. Change the perception of the BOP.
You kind of mentioned some more like alternative music, and I think you mentioned this as well in your manifesto. One of the greatest things about being a student in St. Andrews is we have so many like cool independent music groups, whether it be like Wax Collective or Copper Coil. Would you try to incorporate them into more union events?
Oh, absolutely. I recognize that those guys do what they do simply out of a love for music and a love for that they have a passion for events, of a specific kind. And especially Wax Collective has been running, I think, since my first year, 2016. So they have had time to refine how their events work already. And I would love to bring them on simply because of their expertise and the fact that they do provide something different. And I think by working with them, with their passion, combining it with the spaces that the union provides, I think some great things could be done.
Yeah, it would be really cool to try to see like a collaboration. I know the LGBTQ subcommittee of the union has had a bunch of crossover events with some of the more like in-town groups.
Yep. And in my manifesto, I do mention we could do events with ticket splits. So you could sort of combine a society or a group with the union management to host an event. And it sort of makes everyone happy. You give them a space and the advertising and the sort of clout of, okay, we're hosting something at the union.
Yeah.
And in return, you get something that's different. To bring different and more and new people to come try something new out.
You also mentioned with regards to sort of trying to reach out more to what students want to see, establishing a new subcommittee for ENTs. Yes. And I was kind of wondering what you had envisioned for that.
Yes. So I recognize that a lot of things that work under the union are going to be under stress after the past year. And the ENTs crew is one that I am particularly, I don't want to say concerned about, but I know that people are graduating all the time and they haven't been in the building in a year at this point. So they have not been able to refine their skills. As for the new subcommittee, I think that it would just help bring everything together. At the moment, I almost see the DoES role, it's obviously a leadership role, but because of the way it works, it almost seems as if all the planning for everything is just done by this one person. And I am quite uncomfortable by that fact. So by bringing in a new subcommittee under it, and specifically to help with event planning, you'd be able to bring in people that are interested in that, and you'd get more voices heard specifically. Not only that, but it does balance the workload a bit better between the specific tech side of things, the planning side of things, and the leadership side of things. And the reason why I would put that planning committee under ENTs is simply because I feel like that's what makes the most sense. It's best to plan events whilst you also have people with tech expertise there, because they can immediately say, this is possible, this is not possible, this will take this much time, etc., etc.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about kind of the events that the union offers, but I think an interesting thing that you touched on in your manifesto is the physical building of itself has not really changed in quite a long time. So I was hoping, can you sort of describe as best as you can your envision like aesthetic for what a new union would look like?
I recognize that the union building sort of has to do its job first and foremost, but I have a feeling like, to me, it takes functionality over form. And there are just small things which we can do to improve things. I know that Tom has done the student art, he's led the student art committee, student art movement. It's not the best word for it, but he's done a lot for that this year. And I think that will go a bit into it, but I still feel like just putting up art, the union itself feels very, very, there's a thing here, table here, and that you need little flourishes to just make it come alive. A big part, I focus a lot on lighting for the interior. I think there are simple things that we can do to change the lighting, because currently it does feel quite oppressive, and you can't just turn off the lights because of health and safety and all sorts of reasons. So especially improving spaces like Main Bar and Sandy's by just adding a couple more lighting options, which are simple and cheap, I think that they'll do wonders. And also just the outside area. I know that it needs to exist as a space for deliveries first and foremost. So the options that we look into need to be flexible and they need to be able to be moved sort of if necessary. So you can't do too much with it. But I think the first thing I would do with the outside is change the off-colored lights that are there at the moment. There are some very old fairy lights which have changed. You know, and after that, I will probably look at sort of just sprucing up the place a bit, making it a bit more attractive.
The neo-brutalist approach to lighting that currently exists in the Union is like somehow both way too harsh, but also never in the right place for when you're trying to study. Like,
you can tell, like, the Union is objectively a brutalist building with a bit of a glass facade on that was put on, what, 6, 7, 8 years ago now? Yeah. And, like, the outside, the glass looks attractive, but on the inside, it's still very much that kind of sort of design philosophy of it serves a purpose and a function, and it does it, but doesn't necessarily do it with flair and style.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel that. So one of the other things that follows under the DoES sort of remit is safety on nights out in the Union. And there are already existing quite a lot of safety measures in place, but it's not necessarily something that everyone is super aware of and what to do if something goes wrong. And I was wondering, are there any like just sort of basic improvements that you would like to make to how safety is being run right now, whether that be with the bouncers or when someone gets too drunk or something like that? And then also, how would you go about communicating these measures to people so they become a little bit more widely known?
Yes, I focus quite a lot on safety. I think it's something that people don't really realize as part of the DoES remit. Sit on the disciplinaries board and you are head of health and safety. So I would work on just ensuring that all the bouncers are trained in how to handle things properly, especially after coming back for in-person events, hopefully. After over a year, I think it's more than fair to expect that, you know, we should have some refresher training courses. I would also like to sort of do a bit of training with bar staff themselves to help them recognize just the signs of if something's going wrong, you know, if someone looks a bit too drunk, what to do. I just want to streamline those sort of things within the Union staff side of things. I would also work with the DoWell to really just try and improve the reporting procedures that are done by the Union, because at the moment they are unacceptable. It can take up to 3 weeks, for example, to get a meeting to report a case of sexual assault. And I think especially over the past year, with the things that we've seen with accounts through things like St. Andrew's Survivors, sexual assault is a problem which is still, unfortunately, way too prevalent in this town. I'm not going to pretend and say that I'm going to be the one to fix it, because I can't. It is a systemic issue which goes beyond what one person can do. But I want everyone to know that, you know, if elected, this is absolutely a priority of mine, and I would make it a focus instantly.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. I think, you know, what you said about not everyone realizing how big of an issue that it is, and that it's the responsibility of sort of a lot of the student association officers, is something I'd like hopefully in the next election cycle, next cycle can be improved upon, especially considering the campaigns right now to separate like academic misconduct and non-academic misconduct, because they're like the same. Yeah.
Exactly. Like there are things like that that we can do just to refine things and make things more comfortable for people to feel like they can stand up for themselves and they can report something. Because I think that the key thing is people feel like they can't report anything because nothing's going to get done about it. The biggest thing we need to do is to make sure that when things are reported, the correct protocols are followed through and the right actions are taken to ensure, people's continued safety.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for those answers. I want to be a little bit time cognizant, so we're gonna move on to the more like general-ish get to know you. I have 3 prepared if that's okay.
Yeah.
First off, frogs or birds?
Frogs, absolutely.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. The second you said birds, I live too close to the sea. Seagulls, no. You can never say birds. Birds in this town, no. I've been attacked by seagulls too many times, and I know that might be unfair on the entirety of bird kind, but seagulls themselves, no, it has to be frogs.
Okay, all right. Very, very decisive. What is your ideal day/night out in pre-COVID St. Andrews?
Ooh. Well, one of my favorite things is a cheeky outside pint, 3, 4 p.m. Maybe after you've spent a good few hours sort of on your essay or something, and you're like, okay, I'm going to transition into having a cheeky night out. And my favorite ones are always the ones where you just sort of get, you go with emotions and you just see what happens, I think my favorite nights out are always the ones that balance the sort of intimate couple of friends with the sort of being in a big sweaty room. I love both of those, and the perfect night out incorporates both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite pub in St. Andrews if you had to choose one? I know it's tough.
Ooh. I think I'm going to have to say Aikman's. I have a soft spot for Aikman's. I love it. It's like one of the only still locally run pubs, and the drinks are reasonably priced, and it just has a great vibe.
Yeah, I am looking forward to getting back to those Aikman cellar nights.
Yes. Yep.
And their music pub quiz that they never seem to announce, but is always happening.
It always happens, and then it's like 100 songs, and they just play this tape. That's it. It's the most basic pub quiz, but I absolutely love the fact that that's how they do
it. Yeah. So our final question is post-COVID, assuming concerts are still a thing, would you rather see Carly Rae Jepsen or Charlie XCX live?
You can't make me choose.
All right. Yeah. If you can't choose, what song mashup do you want between the two of them?
Oh my god. I would absolutely. Okay, if I had to mash up Carly Rae Jepsen and Charlie, Run Away With Me by Carly and Vroom Vroom by Charlie. Somehow combine those two. Get the really aggressive production on Vroom Vroom along with, just take the sax solo from Run Away With Me, because that itself is a work of art.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer them, and good luck in this upcoming week.
Thank you for having me. Cheers.
Absolutely.